Good evening, everyone. Today we're considering lesson 13 from our grade 1 ABRSM, and my name is Toyin Isijola. And our topic today is construction of major scale 2, key C major, scale and key signature in both clef. And from our last summary, we considered construction of major scale 1, introducing tones and semitones in both clefs, as well as wavelengths and the interval between these notes. We notice the intervals between the third and the fourth, and also the 7th and the 8th degrees. They are both semitones. And lastly, we also considered all the intervals, their tones between, a tone, you have 2 semitones. And these patterns are the patterns in which we've built the major scale upon. There we considered tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Thank you. Let's go right into today's class. The objective of this class today is that we will need to understand the correlation between the intervals and major scales, construction of C major. Now let's see the relationship between intervals and scales, how they work out. Before we look at the scales, we need to cover intervals, as scales is made up of different intervals. An interval is the distance between 2 notes, e.g. C to G or G to E. We saw semitones in the previous lessons for either sharp or flat. Semitones are the smallest interval in the Western music. It is 1 note or 1 key on the keyboard or 1 fret on a guitar. 2 semitones make a tone. These can be any semitones, such as F to G or B to C sharp. These 2 intervals are used to make scales. First, let's see how we combine interval to make the scales. That's the major scale. If you play all the white keys on the keyboard, starting from a C, which is the root, up to the next C, which is an higher C, we have successfully played an octave. You will have played a C major scale. And so when we also run from a G to another G, we have also played a G major scale. Also, if we run from F to another F, we have also played an F major scale. Yeah, let's continue to define our major scale. A major scale has 7 different lettered notes, while it also ends on the first letter. What do I mean? When we start using the C for an example, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we have to end on C. It's also synonymous to when we say Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, T, then we have to go back to the C, but an higher C now, then we have Do. So now that makes the definition of a scale clear. It contains of 7 different notes, but we end it on the very first note that we started from. You either have it as a sharp or as a flat, but it comes only once in the combination of those different letters. So we see it there. We have the C major scale, which contains of just what we made as an example now: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C, but an higher C now. So now when we talk about this, we mean it is all natural, no sharp, no flat for C. And note that all 7 letters are always used only once and always in order from the first note used. Each note in a scale is numbered. This is called the degree of the scale. The first note is called the first degree. So in C, the C is the first degree, while the D is the second degree, the E is the third degree, and then the G is going to be the 5th degree. So if we also decide to use the scale of D, we'll also have D as the first degree, E as the second degree, F as the third degree, and so on and so forth. So it is made clear. As we continue in this slide, we shall use the diagram here to explain how the scale is being made. Firstly, we can see the very first diagram represents the treble stave, while the second one represents the bass stave. Let's consider the first one. Now we can find first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. Yes, it's not to confuse us, but to explain to us better. We said it earlier on that we have 8 notes, and these notes, each of it are referred to as a degree. So that's why we have the first degree, the second degree, the third, and so on. Now we also find written on that very stave E, F, G, A, B, C, and so on. These are the names given to each line or space on the stave. So this will help us identify the name of the notes that falls either in the space or on the line. Now the very first one we find there, that E represents that very first line, while the F represents the very first space. Now whether we have the key signature or we do not have the key signature, we can always take our explanation from the names each line or space bear to be able to know what kind of note we are dealing with. Then also we can see the note floated in and on the lines and spaces. And of course we can see the tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone that we discussed earlier on. Now this very note we can see is on a ledger line, and that very note is dealing with the key of C, and that's why we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we finally finish that stave or octave with C, an higher C right now, as we said the other time. Now, that note you are finding on the line outside the line and space falls on the ledger line, and that note represents C. And the next one falling below the line, which is inside the space, an imaginary space this time now called the ledger space, is D. And the one that falls on that very line down there is E. And that's how we have them. Now let's come to the bass parts so we can explain what we have there. It's also simple, looking like the former, but just that this is a bass clef. Now we can see the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C there. And when we consider this very stave, it's a little bit different from the treble stave in that the treble stave has a mnemonics which starts with the E, and we represent that with the every good boy deserves favor. That's talking about the lines. And when we talk about the faces, when we talk about the space, we also have face, F-A-C-E. Now when we come to the bass part, we don't deal with it that way. It's a little bit different. The very first line that we have here is G. Good boy deserves favor always. And now we also have what will be inside the space, and that will be A, C, E, and all the like. Now it's a little bit different, as I said, because if we go the same way, we're going to misinterpret all the notes that are there. So when we look at it properly, we discover that the C falls inside the second space, and that's why we have our notes starting from the second space, unlike the other one that, it's a little bit lower. This one moves a little bit higher, and so we have the C in that second space and the D on the third line, while we have E in the third space, and that's how we have them. Now let's consider the interval between the third and the fourth degrees, while also we have the 7th and 8th degrees. We pick this out because we want to explain what is happening in that place. The very first note we can see on this very small keyboard, as small as it is, it's an octave, just one octave, but it's a representation for us to be able to explain and get what we're discussing here. Between the C and D, we discover that there is a black note, and between the D and E, there is another black note. But between the E and the F, we do not have any black note. The E there is what we represent as the 3rd degree, while the F is represented as the 4th degree. Also, when we look at it clearly, we discover that the B is representing the 7th degree, while the C is representing the 8th degrees. Now, between the C and this D is a tone. Mind you, we said the other time that 2 semitones make one tone. Now, there is a distance between the C and the black. That is a semitone. And then from that black to the D is also a semitone. From the D to the black, the next black, that is a semitone. And from that black to the E is another semitone. Now, as we rightly said that we are considering the 3rd and the 4th which is the E and the F. In between the E and the F, there is no black notes, and that is why we have it as semitone movement between the E and the F. Now, let's consider also the 7th and the 8th. There is no also black key or black note in between the between the B and the C. So therefore, the movement between the B and the C is also a semitone. Those ones that have black, from a particular note to a black is a semitone, and from that black to another note is a semitone. And that's why we have from one white key that has a black in between to the other white key is a tone. I think by now it should be a little bit more clearer to us than before. In this slide, we shall be talking about the pattern of the major scale pattern. The pattern is simply tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitones. And that's the pattern we use in building up the major scales. The pattern is the same for every major scale. I repeat, it is the same for every major scale. So if you want to construct any key, whether C or G or D or F or anyone, simply use tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And when you use that, you are already guided in the right way. We shall also see the important thing about the major scale is also that when we start on a particular note, we also end on that same note. Now, like we said the other time, if we start from C, which is the root, and then we move on like that, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. Now we end it on the higher C. And so, with that, we have built a major scale, and a major scale for C. There is a note on every line. Also, there is also a note on every space. No empty space, no empty line. And so, where we start from, also we move higher and we end there. And so these are the basic rules that we have to put in place when building a major scale. That is the pattern. And so, because we've discussed the 3 and the 4th, the 3rd and the 4th, and then the 7th and the 8th. So now, these rules are true for every major scale, and we will come back to them when we look at the other scale in the next section. That is when we'll be considering the G major scale. We should also note that when we deal with key C, it has no sharp and also no flats. Thank you. See you in the next slide. We have some questions here for us to test our knowledge. And that will bring us to the summary learning from this slide. By now, we should have understood the correlation between the interval and the major scales. Also, the construction of C major scale. And we'll be talking about our next topic, in the next slide. Thank you. If you have any question, you just go straight to the next slide and you'll find my email there. Just send me an email, your question, and I will answer the question. The references are taken from the books we have below here for more reference and understanding.